We're ready when you are, Ms.
I forgot. All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome. I'd like to call the April 22nd, 2024 Hilliard City Council regular meeting to order. And Mr. Greg Betts will provide the invocation, and then we will say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to begin this evening by first recognizing that today, beginning at sunset, is the first day of Passover, the Jewish holiday that commemorates the Hebrews' liberation from slavery in Egypt and the passing over of the forces of destruction. I would also be remiss if I failed to recognize that on the day of our last council meeting, which I unfortunately was unable to attend, was the Islamic holiday of Eid al-Fitr, which marks the end of Ramadan, and that the Christian celebration of Easter was just 8 days prior to that. So in this season of reflection, hope, and renewal for so many of our world's religions, I say to all, Shalom Aleichem, Assalamu Alaikum, and peace be upon you. Let us pray. As we begin this meeting of the people's business at a time when so much of the world is divided and embroiled in bitter strife, conflict, and war, let empathy be our guiding star. As we share our views and perspectives this evening, may we each take a moment to step into each other's shoes and into the shoes of our fellow citizens and truly feel their experiences and their emotions. And with each empathetic connection, may we build and fortify the bridges of mutual respect and understanding, and may those bridges serve to unite us all as fellow team members, fellow citizens, and fellow human beings. May our deliberations be fueled with empathy, guided by wisdom and respect, and inspired by the boundless potential that lies within each of us. Finally, through this invocation of empathy, let us weave the threads of understanding and compassion for all, and foster an environment in which every voice is valued. Amen.
Please stand. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Betts,
Here?
Mr. Carrier,
Here.
Ms. Cole,
Here.
Vice President Catone,
Here.
Ms. Hales excused, Mr. Teeter,
Here.
President Vermillion.
Here. Council has copies of the April 9th, 2024 regular meeting minutes. Are there any changes or corrections? All right, seeing none, those minutes stand approved. Now we'll go into commission and board reports. Board of Zoning Appeals, Emily Cole.
Yes, council is in the process of reviewing applications for a vacancy and look forward to filling that position soon.
Right, Destination Hilliard, Greg Betts.
No update. The next meeting is the 15th of May.
Great. Environmental Sustainability Commission, the new styrofoam densifier is expected to arrive sometime in mid-June, and the recycling event was a success. Many more vehicles came through than the prior year. So, also, Mr. Betts, do you have an update on the Keep Hilliard Beautiful group?
No update at the moment, but I will be attending the first meeting that I will have become a member of that group on the 24th.
Great, thanks. MORPC, Ms. Crandall.
No update this evening. Thank you.
Planning and Zoning, Emily Cole.
Yes, they met recently and have scheduled a special meeting for May 2nd to more deeply review the presentation, I'm reading my notes, around the proposed zoning floating district. And so I'm happy to forward that information to anyone who missed it in case you'd like to attend. The commission had a lot of thoughts, so they're going to be reviewing during that special meeting.
Okay. Public Arts Commission, a reminder that we meet the first Monday of every month at 5 p.m. in here. Recreation and Parks Advisory.
So The Senior Center hosted a senior prom last Thursday night. It was the first one, and I was able to attend that, and it was just so stinking cute. There were like 25 to 30 people there. Women they dressed up and wore gowns, and the few men that did come wore suit jackets, and some wore ties. There was live music, people were dancing, there was dinner. It was just a lot of fun. There were women that were dancing all night, and I gotta tell you, this one woman danced all night long in her fancy dress, and toward the end, she did a full-out split on the floor. She was probably in her, somewhere 70s, 80s, I don't know, but it was pretty impressive, and it was a lot of fun. So, I just wanted to give a shout out to Amy Van Huffel, who organized that whole thing.
Awesome. Shade Tree Commission.
No report.
And back to Aging in Place Committee, Tina.
And I'm back. Okay, so some members of the Aging in Place Committee, myself included, help set up and tear down for that dance, and we will also be at the Senior Health Fair tomorrow in the Senior Center. That's it.
Okay, very good. Now we have a presentation from CODA, and we'll turn the time over to Kelsey.
Good evening. We still have to get close to this, which is becoming increasingly difficult. So just someone give me the nod if I have to make myself a little louder here.
I've had that problem for years.
Glad we could be acquainted. Good evening, President Vermillion, members of council. I'm Kelsey Ellingson. I'm here with CODA. I brought a small entourage for you. Robbie Banks is our Director of Community Impact. Kimberly Sharp, who many of you know, she's our Senior Director of Development at CODA. And then Elliott Lewis is going to come in and help me with part of this presentation in just a little while. I know you have a lot of important items on the agenda. I include this among them. And we want to be respectful of your time, so let's just dig right in. I have the remote. Here we go. Let's see. I told you that. I told you who we are. I'll send out an SOS and you'll know. How about that? Great. So I think most of you know what LinkUs is. It is a transformational transportation initiative for our region designed to respond to challenges of today and the ones we know that we're going to face tomorrow as a region. Chief among them, you know this, I just went to your State of the City again. Excellent job, staff. Growth, chief among them. We're expecting almost 1 million more people to come to this region by 2050. Our roads are not going to grow by that much, so imagine 50% more people driving on essentially the same number of roads. That spells congestion and a whole host of other problems that we need to anticipate and design to solve before that happens. Secondly, we already know that the cost of living is rising across all communities in Central Ohio. The cost of housing alone has gone up by about 45% since 2020, and that's not the only thing that's going up. Families are spending on average $12,700 for transportation. Many are spending about that much because they're choosing a car. So families are feeling the squeeze. Transportation, a more comprehensive system, a higher level of service can help respond to these growing costs and help our neighbors today stay our neighbors for tomorrow. And then finally, we know, everyone knows, if we want to live in a thriving community, we can't let people be boxed out of opportunity. And right now, we know that a significant number of residents across Franklin County live in areas of low or very low opportunity, including 40,000 of those households who lack a personal vehicle. So access to stellar public transportation becomes part of the equation of keeping them afloat, helping them access economic self-sufficiency and opportunity. So doing that little context setting together, this is where I just like to pause and say I have given 1.5-hour long versions of this presentation, which I promise you are not getting, thankfully. But as expansive as it is, it really comes back to this slide. So just remember this here, these 3 key buckets of work. So what is LinkUs all about? How are we going to tackle those challenges I just told you about? It's about providing first, faster, more reliable public transportation. Second, people use other infrastructure to connect to transit, like sidewalks, bikeways, and trails. Okay, so we have to think about improving that as well. And then third, while those first two address the community as it looks today, as the sprawl that we face today, we have to acknowledge we get to write a new chapter. I've heard about Hilliard's plans for improving walkability. Linkus is very much in line with that. We can bring the A's and B's and C's of where people are trying to go closer together, and that serves everyone, whether you're trying to hop on a vehicle, one of our vehicles for part of your journey or not. So just remember this slide. I will reference it throughout. A bit more housekeeping here. The scale of Linkus is CODA service territory. That includes any jurisdiction that has signed our charter. Looks mostly like Franklin County, but a couple of slivers of non-Franklin County portions of other of our municipal partners, like Westerville and Reynoldsburg, for example. And then also to implement this vision, this transformational initiative, we need to think differently about how we're funded. Our partners across the state who are delivering rapid transit, bus rapid transit is what I'm going to show you next on the following slides. They're not funded on a 0.5% sales tax like CODA is. They're funded at a 0.8 or a 1%. And that's where we're looking to be, 1% sales tax. That's important for a couple of reasons. First is just that right now we're sitting at a rare moment in history where we have unprecedented levels of grants available to us at the federal level. And so we have the opportunity to draw down really in excess of $650 million to catalyze an overall $8 billion revenue plan to build out and run a world-class system for this region. But they don't just give you those funds without knowing that you can operate that system, right? So that local revenue goes towards providing the improved operations to deliver the service that residents will expect. Okay, and just so much gratitude to staff for coming up with an interesting way to let me run this presentation, because I really wanted you to see this animation here. So this is bus rapid transit. If you're thinking to yourself, it looks a lot like light rail, it's because it does in fact capture many of the same amenities of light rail. You saw that level boarding, you saw multiple doors, off-board fare collection, the dedicated right-of-way you see here in those red stripes. That is, or I should say differently, a bus-only lane, a way to prioritize vehicles that are moving lots of people at once, rather than just single occupancy vehicles. Something that'll be an important strategy to manage the extra volume of people using our roads. Okay, so these design elements are all thoughtfully incorporated because they reduce the time it takes for our vehicles to traverse the routes. It makes it about 25% faster for any passenger, and something we think everyone deserves. A couple of other things to note on this, as again, I know Hilliard is working hard on its own sustainability goals. CODA is very much there with you. We will be phasing out our last diesel vehicle by the end of this year. By 2035, we will be on an entirely renewable fleet of vehicles, and by 2045, our entire organization will be net zero emissions. So I just want to lay that out for you. These vehicles are clean vehicles. You'll also notice they were larger. I neglected to say that one fact, which is that these are articulated buses, or scrunchy buses as I like to call them. They can carry a higher number of people that we'll expect will want to make use of this premium service. Okay, so I'm gonna, since you're here and this is what you get for tuning in, good members of the public, I'm gonna tell you at some point this map is gonna change, okay? It's gonna look a little bit different, but right now what I have for you is this map here of the bus rapid transit corridors. So basically that means the places that this new premium rapid service is going to be deployed. The ones in blue you see here are the three we have identified. West Broad Street is sitting at about 60% design, East Main around 30%, and then Northwest, which is up Olentangy River Road, Bethel, Sawmill, and out through Dublin. The ones in greens are based off of previous study that we know they're known good candidates for us to fill out a total of 5, because that is our goalpost for implementing Link Us, is we want to create 5 rapid transit corridors where you will see this service. In total, and just last point on that, we hope to identify the remaining 2 maybe sometime this summer, so that everyone has transparency around where we're trying to locate this. So more to come on that. Overall, Link Us is not just about improving the infrastructure along corridors and deploying BRT. That is part of it, but actually it represents an overall increase of 45% in the service we're providing to the community. That includes servicing all 5 of those bus rapid transit corridors, but it also includes enhancements to our underlying fixed route. So I know, for example, that Hilliard has long desired an improved connection to OSU. That is a piece of this that we're working very hard to try to implement and respond to what we've heard very clearly from you. But that's just an example of what you might see, or otherwise you would see late night service or more frequent service. So if you miss your bus, I once took I believe I took the 32 here to meet with your staff from where I live in Columbus. And if I missed my bus, as someone who's perpetually a little bit late, I would have had to wait an hour. It's a lot easier for me to just plan to use CODA and do so successfully if that's a 30-minute or 15-minute, or one day like a 7-minute headway, right? These are the things that we can have if we want to buy into plans like these. So again, in that 45% increase in service, BRT, bus rapid transit, the underlying fixed route, and then also an on-demand service we run called CODA Plus. We're looking to launch a total of about 8 zones between now and 2050 if Link Us is able to move forward. And this is our Uber or Lyft-like service. It currently exists in Grove City, Westerville, and on the south side of Columbus proper. We give our thanks to Grove City for being our original pilot partner. They love this service. If you ever have questions about it, I encourage you to talk to your colleagues over in Grove City or in Westerville about this. But essentially, it's point-to-point service, no surge like you would get if you rode an Uber or a Lyft. It's I think a $3 fare for as a base fare, 2 for seniors, free for students. Okay, so it is a very popular service that we're excited to provide today and hope to expand to more communities who want it in the future. If that's you, then please strike up a conversation with us about it. Okay, I know I'm not on West Broad Street, but I do want to just give you a little bit of the lay of the land of where the corridors nearest you will be. So again, West Broad Street, this one goes from downtown, which we call our convergence, out to Prairie Township, just past the casino there. Where you see the solid line is dedicated right-of-way, again, bus-only lanes, and then the dash is where we are in shared right-of-way. You can see from this price tag here, around $340 million. This is a significant investment. And then to want to do that in 4 additional locations, you can come to understand why we're talking about looking at our financing and what's sustainable for CODA to do this. But in total, it's about 9.3 miles of roadway here. Northwest is the longest corridor as of now, and it's sitting at about $188 million. And whereas the other corridors I might give you information about, West Broad, East Main Street, are close to our heart at CODA because they help significant portions of population who are living in areas of persistent poverty connect to opportunity, because sometimes you just don't have the job opportunities in your home neighborhood. In the case of Northwest, this is probably a more prosperous route with the access to a significant number of jobs. Approximately 30% of all jobs in Franklin County you can access on this route, which is why, again, it becomes very important not just to have a line here or a line there, but to have a transit system that connects people to any corner of our region, from any corner of our region to the other. We're also expecting significant population growth. And so again, as we think about where will all those people go, will they go out, or will we be able to live in closer settings where we can move easily around. That's really something that we should think carefully about and link us plans for. Just a personal anecdote, maybe you also know or have experienced this, but I know when I was a teenager, my mother was commuting for a total of 3 hours a day back in New York State. And that is just not something we should concede for ourselves, our future selves, or for future families without a lot of thought. So that doesn't have to be where we go, and it's strategies like these that help us to plan for a different future for ourselves. Okay, so again, I know I'm not on the West Broad Street, but this, I'm assuming most have driven along West Broad, and it does not feel like this today. It's definitely centered around cars that are moving very quickly with pretty minimal pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. The impact of implementing here, link us here, really you could plop this into anywhere else we're doing a corridor, but just imagine the quality of life difference of being able to move in a place like this, where you might want to go and check out the local businesses more, walk outside, choose healthier habits. You might feel less stress just by virtue of being in this place versus as it looks today. So this is really just a sliver of the opportunity that Link Us holds for us. I do want to point out, it's smaller in this slide here, so I'll just move my cursor over it. We have these really cool, sleek stations. We know we fit into about between 40 and 50 different jurisdictions, cities or otherwise, in our service territory. Not all of them want a bright red CODA station, right? So this is our attempt to fit in appropriately among all of our diverse communities, but consistently so that people know where they're at. They're at a CODA stop. But so just pointing out some other designs here, we've got snowmelt pavement. It's hard to point that out on a 62-degree day, but for as long as that's relevant, it's a really important accessibility add-on for us. Today, CODA's for everyone, and we're excited that Link Us includes amenities to make it even more accessible for everyone. Luggage, stroller, wheelchair, what have you. But we've got an emergency call box, as well as some green infrastructure along it and some protection for people as they move about. Still, yes, with cars. Cars are part of our future, but also some bikes. Let's keep moving here. And then this is just one example of what we call a micro-mobility hub. We hope to be part of an increasing number of residents' journeys, but we know that we will probably still be just one leg, and whether they choose to finish it on their own 2 feet, on a bike or a scooter, or whatever the kids come up with next, we want to create these hubs, and so you'll see that micromobility hubs will appear along corridors. This is a boxier version where space allows, and then we have a linear version where it does not. So here's where I call in my good, my teammate Elliott here. He's going to talk about transit supportive infrastructure, and just because I promised it, I told you about that slide I would keep coming back to. We just talked a lot about that first bucket, which is the transit service. And then we talked about all that other infrastructure that goes into supporting people's ability to use transit. That's what this whole section is about. We call it transit supportive infrastructure, as you could guess. So CODA has signed an MOU with our partners at MORPC. We know that MORPC has deep collaborations with lots of communities. It's a trusted partner. And so we're trusting them to administer about just under a third of all new levy proceeds for the purpose of providing funds to communities to implement this sort of infrastructure projects. So I'm going to let him tell you about that, and then I'll be back to close this out. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelsey, and thank you for the opportunity to present today. So as Kelsey said, I'm Elliott Lewis. I'm a principal planner with MORPC, and I also serve as the Transit Supportive Infrastructure Program Manager at MORPC. You'll hear me refer to TSI. We planners love our acronyms. So when we think of TSI, though, think of all the things that connect you to transit service. We can propose all of the best bus service in the world, but if you can't safely get where you need to go in a connected fashion, it doesn't do you as good. I've got about a 4-block walk to my bus stop, and I've got pretty good sidewalks. But we know that there are a lot of places in our region, even in Hilliard, where sidewalks may be crumbling or non-existent, and you have people still walking along them, even carrying groceries or toting kids along, pushing a stroller or in some mobility device. So we want to meet that. We recognize that need, and we want to meet that need to make our entire mobility network as great as possible. And so early on, when we went through this process, we identified over 500 miles region-wide of different sidewalks, bikeways, trails that could help support this vision and additional on-roadway investments as well. So we know that this is important. The TSI program, it's a portion of the overall Link Us initiative, would be over a quarter of what's proposed as the new sales tax, which would roughly be about $50 to $60 million annually for basically dedicated active transportation infrastructure. This is an order of magnitude basically above any other resource that we have regionally to invest in these types of projects. And these types of projects too oftentimes are in that little tweener spot of they're too big to really fold into local capital improvement programs, but maybe too small to go after larger federal programs and go through the rigor that's there. So this represents $60 million up to that it can be reinvested in needed projects that really don't have as many other opportunities as possible. So this is everything from bike lanes, trails, crosswalks, even think about upgraded bus stops to where current policy might not lend itself to upgrading beyond the sign on the side of the road, but we've had a number of communities who want to go ahead and use this as a resource to put in shelters and benches and things like that. And so what we've been doing is we've invited every single jurisdiction, Hilliard included, to be part of the not just planning process for identifying projects, but putting this program structure together and the policies that govern it. I do have to give a shout out to city staff here. They have been not only helpful, but instrumental in finding projects and building a program that helps the residents, the people who work here in Hilliard, as well as something that is the best for the region. So I applaud them and thank them, and actually be here tomorrow to continue another working session. So also thank you for hosting. What we've done so far is identified over 300 potential projects and really prioritizing over 100 of those to bring into the first 5 years of this program, what the first fruits of this program could be. That alone is upwards of $500 million in investment. So what we've been doing over the past month or so and over the next couple of months is to really focus that and identify what actual projects we can either construct or at least develop a little bit within the first 5 years of the program. So we've talked a lot about mobility. And this is a mobility initiative, but you can't have mobility without places to go to and places to go from. And we've talked a lot about growth, not growth that's happening in the future, but growth that's already happening now. And we're thinking of ways of not only looking at our mobility networks, but how we develop and how can we capture this growth in a way that brings some homes and destinations a little closer together in areas where we have a little bit more capacity for infill. That supports transit. So if you ever heard of transit-oriented development, TOD, that's that kind of philosophy. But it also acts to help preserve existing housing options, both physically and financially, as well as a lot of our rural resources too. And so thinking about what TOD itself, I'll get into equitable transit-oriented development, but thinking about TOD itself, up in Cleveland is a very similar line to one of the bus rapid transit lines we've been talking about. It's called the Health Line up there. After it was built, there's a lot of numbers up there, but after it was built, almost $10 billion with a B dollars of related economic development followed that investment. to the tune of almost $200 gained for every dollar invested in the public transit space. So we know this is a powerful force for economic development, but we want to make sure that we do it in such a way that everyone can have some opportunity to buy into both the development and preserve, like I said, preserve the housing that we have. So just in the span of about 6 years or so, you have new developments coming alongside this previous vacant lot, and that's what we're talking about is having that a little bit of excess capacity there. Where can we build some more homes and some more services? So think about that power as a force. We want to think of a strategy to make sure that we're not pricing people out of places where they've lived for generations. That we, when we have this development, when we do these investments, that it can create new jobs and amenities that people actually do have access to. And so we're drawing from peer communities who've gone through this before, and Chicago has an equitable TOD policy plan. So you can check that out with the QR code. But this is one of the documents that we're using to serve as inspiration and source material for a local ETOD strategy plan. So more information in a few months on that as that's being wrapped up. But again, we're proposing a lot of change and investment in our mobility networks, in our development, but we're not doing it just because buses are cool and we like transit, but we do it because we understand what we need to do in order to grow effectively in the future, capture this growth. That's a picture of a Long Street Bridge on the east side of downtown Columbus. It spans over I-71. When I-71 came in, it tore through the Near East neighborhoods there. And while we can't necessarily bridge every gap, what we want to do is this is a symbol of, again, reinvesting in a way where we're not shoving people out. And we do it in a way that we can push the entire region forward in a prosperous way. So just very simply, take away all of the outcome slides. We see all these investments. We think about how we are building our region, our homes, our cities, and again, putting those together in a way that everyone can have buy-in to it. You want to introduce this?
I think actually, for the sake of time, we're going to skip this video here. It's a 90-second video, but nonetheless, I'm just going to move us along here. Here's just a list of what we're hoping to tackle next over the next few months. And I won't read through those specifically, but I will take your questions about any of them or anything else before we just thank you for your time and let you continue with your meeting.
Thank you so much for that presentation. It was really interesting, and I'm excited to see all of this come to fruition. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Tina?
I do have a couple of questions. You noted that the 30% of the jobs in Franklin County are on the northwest BRT corridor.
Correct.
What are those jobs? I mean, where are they? Is that OSU? 30% is a lot, big number.
Sure, and I'm going to begin talking and then look to my friend Kim here to come tell me also. But yes, the significant part is the Innovation District, now Carmenton at OSU, but it does also capture a lot of the economic activity happening up in Dublin as well, and that corridor, like the others, comes to connect downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And multiple hospitals. There you go,
Okay,
yes.
Thank you. And then my second question is, in Cleveland, the transit, you said, added 8,800 houses and a larger number of jobs. What kind of housing and units were they, and what kind of jobs came as a result?
Thank you. I don't have all the details, but I know it was a mix of housing, so for sale and for rent. And I know there's a goal of certain price points, so to serve a certain percentage of the average median income for the area. And the goal, of course, is being that it's attainable to the local workforce,
Right.
which makes quite a range of income. but you can kind of see where it's around transit stations, it'll be more dense, taller, and between, you'll see more like townhouses and duplexes.
Okay, and what kind of jobs then came up along the way?
The Health Line was definitely anchored by the Cleveland Clinic. So there's a lot of, but there's a whole bunch of support jobs along the corridor as well.
Okay, all right, thank you very much, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Yeah, Les.
First of all, thank you very much for coming. This is very informative. I look at it a little differently, and that might surprise some of you, might not, but basically what's coming down the pike in these presentations is a 0.5% income tax request of the residents of Hilliard. And so when I look at that, that comes out to give or take on some napkin math, about $10 million that you want the Hilliard community to pay for on a current revenue stream of about $175 million from revenue going to CODA. So just rough numbers, that's about 5.5%, 5.8%.
It's sales tax.
Sales tax, that's what I'm saying. I'm sorry, sales tax. So when you look at those numbers, and then I look at the number of buses by the number of routes and the number of people you've served as 214,000, your ridership by 52 weeks, it comes at about 500 people per day per bus. Is that close, or am I way off?
That are coming into Hilliard?
No, that are riding the buses, the CODA buses per day.
Oh, many more than that.
Okay.
Are writing. What was our? Do you know what our? Was it 11 million? 11 million.
11 million rides, so 200,
yeah.
okay, so my number, okay, so 214 is just one sliver of that 11 million. I got you.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm trying to understand, I think it would be very important for Hilliard to understand, when you look at the linkest routes that you guys put up there, and I don't have the slide, it's back 3 or 4, there's no routes coming into Hilliard. They're all going up to the north or to the south. Keep going back.
I'll keep going and I'll let her.
So I'll address that. There is going to be an updated corridor map.
There you go. Whoop, back one.
So we'll
Other way.
note, and that'll come through
13,
the city
number
manager's
13.
office. But I will note that we
There it
worked
is.
closely with the Hilliard staff, and so there's 2 goals in short term that we're working on currently. One is that connection from OSU to Hilliard. I think it was a route that was before the transit redesign. That is a goal to bring that back in the first couple of years. And then we are working with staff in multiple cities, actually, on just analyzing the Heritage Trail, which is in the queue for our Rails to Trail program. But there's quite a bit of right-of-way, so we're just analyzing, could transit also work along there?
Oh, okay.
Those are just analysis. Now, the connection from Hilliard to OSU is an actual goal in the short-range transit plan, so to bring that back, as well as increasing frequency on the line out here on Cemetery Road.
That would be great to see some of that, because when I look at it globally, it looks like you kind of went up and you went, and we're like sitting in the middle, and, you know, we're funding a pretty good, if you think about it, the suburbs are funding a pretty good percentage of what's going to happen here if you guys get your 0.5%. So just my feedback for what it's worth.
Much appreciated.
Also, just wanted to add a perspective on the transit supportive infrastructure portion of it too. I failed to mention some of the projects that have been proposed through here. You know, this portion, again, of Link Us could help bridge a lot of gaps, say on Cemetery Road, multiple phases on Cemetery Road, Leap Road, Davidson, as well as being part of the solution for the Heritage Trail itself.
The connection, you mean, from where it stops, terminus is on down through.
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
Multiple communities along that route have named that their #1 priority.
Awesome.
Anything else? All right. Thank you again. We appreciate you coming out. Are there any changes to the agenda? Okay. And we have one item on the consent agenda, 24-R-30, accepting the public improvements for the Tarleton Meadows West Subdivision, Section 2, Phase 2A. Would anyone like to move this item to the regular agenda for further discussion? All right. So I would entertain a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right, and the voice vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that stands approved. Now we're at the public portion of the meeting, and I don't have anybody signed up for the public portion of the meeting unless I missed somebody. Okay. Now we'll move on to the business of council. We don't have any second readings, but we do have 3 first readings. So will the clerk please read 24-07 by title only? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you didn't want to speak when, regarding the resolution? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was, I apologize. Okay, we will call Mr. Razul up then. Oh. Well, because I take it you are all wanting to speak when the resolution, no? You're wanting to speak now? Oh, okay, all right, I apologize. Okay. All right, well, we'll go back. As you all know, it's 3 minutes. We've got the timer there. We've got the color-coded buttons there. So we'll call up Rania Taba.
Evening, council members. My name is Rania Taba. I've been a resident of Hilliard for the last 25 years. I'm also an educator. In order to remind the council and to allow the public to hear the ceasefire resolution we drafted and presented to the council on March 11th, I will read the full text of the draft now. Whereas the city of Hilliard recognizes and affirms the importance of protecting human rights in our community and all communities across the world, irrespective of national, racial, ethnic, and religious, political, sexual orientation, or other marginalized group affiliation. And whereas the city of Hilliard is proud of the diversity of its community and recognizes the benefit of embracing, celebrating, advocating for, and protecting all members of its community. And whereas the city of Hilliard recognizes that events globally can directly affect the lives of local community members. And whereas the city of Hilliard expresses sympathy and offers condolences for the innocent civilians whose lives have been devastated by the violence occurring in Palestine and Israel. And whereas the city of Hilliard is concerned by the current military aggression and catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza. And whereas the city of Hilliard stresses the importance of protecting all civilian life and respecting international laws during times of armed hostilities. And whereas the city of Hilliard fears that hundreds of thousands of lives are at imminent risk if a ceasefire is not achieved and humanitarian aid is not immediately delivered. And whereas the city of Hilliard expresses sympathy and offers support for those community members who are impacted by the events in Israel and Palestine. And whereas the city of Hilliard stresses the importance of advocating for human rights and recognizing that local actions can have a global impact. And now, therefore, be it resolved by the council of the city of Hilliard that this council does hereby declare that this council joins the growing number of communities locally, nationally, and globally calling for an immediate permanent ceasefire in Gaza, that this council calls for the immediate safe return of all hostages and detainees held in violation of international law in Palestine and Israel, that this council condemns all forms of discrimination, racism, and hatred, that this council calls for the respect of international law and for the protection of all human rights locally, nationally, and globally, that this council offers support to all members of the Hilliard community who have been affected by the events in Israel and Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you. Noura Dabdoub?
President of Council, can I call for just
Yes.
one point of clarification? This part of the agenda is for items that are not on the agenda, and I believe that many of the speakers that are here this evening want to speak on the resolution.
Was there a reason why you didn't want to speak during the resolution?
I mean, our experience was just coming and speaking during the public portion, so we want, is there time to speak before the resolution is voted on?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, I mean, I think we just all wanted to speak before the resolution was voted on, so if you
Oh,
want
of course, yes.
afterwards, that's fine.
Yes, yes.
Is that fine with everybody? Yeah.
Okay, then you can sit back down. Thank you. Okay. All right, well then we will move on. We will now have the clerk read 24-07 by title only.
And for clarification, this is for first reading. Amending Chapter 975 regarding solid waste collection and Exhibit A to Chapter 190 regarding fees of the city codified ordinances.
Would a council member like to sponsor and adopt?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, now we have a staff report.
Yes, thank you, members of council. Good evening. This ordinance is proposing changes to the stormwater solid waste collection section of the code. As you're aware, City Council earlier this year authorized the city manager to enter into agreements for local waste to continue solid waste collection for a new contract beginning July 1st. Upon review of that contract and other items, a review of our code revealed that some updates needed to be made to language and also needed to clarify the fees in Chapter 190 because they were out of line with what has been laid out in that chapter. And so those updates are being made. And we are hoping to pass this so that they are effective by the time the new contract goes into place on July 1st. Happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions? I had one quick question. Should we be able to get in the future recycling at some of the commercial establishments and multifamily businesses?
I know that that is something that may be something in the future, and because that's possible, because we know that it's happened elsewhere, that we at least wanted to be proactive. So if we are able to negotiate that, we're already authorized to do it, and we don't have to come back again to amend the code. So it's being proactive and looking at that in case that becomes available.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, thank you so much. All right, so the second reading will be held on May 13th. Will the clerk please read 24-08 by title only?
Authorizing the city manager to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with Franklin County Engineering for the Elliott Road resurfacing and authorizing the appropriation and expenditure of funds.
Would a council member like to sponsor? And second?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and we have a staff report.
Good evening, members of City Council. So I'm here this evening to ask you to hear the first reading of an ordinance to allowing the city manager to enter into contract with the Franklin County Engineers. They do plan to resurface Elliott Road this summer. About 1,400 feet of Elliott Road is within Hilliard's jurisdiction, and so we would like to participate with them on this project. The estimated cost is about $150,000. The reason this is coming to you as an ordinance and not a resolution, which would be typical, is because when we passed our original capital budget, we did not include funding for this project in that. So that's why we're coming to you to not only authorize the city manager to enter into the agreement, but also to appropriate the funds. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have now.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Les.
Letty, where's the $150,000 coming from? Just general fund?
No, so we have prior year encumbrances for the street maintenance program that were, if you recall, typically when we do capital improvement projects, we authorize them, we put in a contingency amount in that. Sometimes that full contingency is not used. And so the intent is we have some prior year contracts where we didn't use a contingency amount, so it's still for the same fund, the Fund 206. And so we will be closing out some of those POs to free up those dollars to be able to use to appropriate for this purpose.
How much encumbered do we have that's on those types of POs that you just shared? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head.
How hard would it be to get that data for us?
It would be very feasible. I just don't know it off the top of my head.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. The second reading of 24-08 will be held on May 13th. And will the clerk please read 24-09 by title only?
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a development agreement with EQ Britton Flex LLC.
Would a council member like to sponsor? And I need a second.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. And we have a staff report.
Good evening, members of council. This legislation would authorize the city manager to enter into a development agreement to reimburse a developer for relocation of a storm sewer main. At the last planning commission meeting, Equity proposed developing a flex industrial project on the east side of Britton Parkway. As a point of reference on the map, this is the east side of Britton Parkway, just south of where the tree stand is near Mount Carmel. And the storm main goes right through pretty much the middle of the property. And obviously you don't want to build a building over our utility infrastructure. So this development agreement would allow for the reimbursement to relocate the storm to the south side of the property. This is the first reading. There's going to be multiple pieces of legislation at the next council meeting. One for the incentive package, but then also the modification to the PUD text. So both the land use, the incentive package, the entire development program will be on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay. I think that the materials that I read say the west side of Britton Parkway.
That would be a mistake.
Okay. So something to correct. But thank you for your presentation. Any questions? Okay.
David, as you go down south, do you go past this where you're talking about moving this line? You also have another line that runs through the property between the apartments and Anson Drive.
That's a sanitary sewer line, but yes.
It runs right through the middle of there. Is there any thought about why you're doing that one, whacking the other one too, so you can make things more, because that's going to have to happen sooner or later in that other spot, right?
It will. I mean, ultimately, we would want to get into the negotiation on what's proposed there, because do we want to have any city involvement in the other one? It's going to depend on if it's a job creation type project or not. This project retains and grows eco-plumbers in the community. They have 190 jobs now. We're adding 60 more as part of this commitment. So we would consider that if it made sense as part of the deal. For this specific project, the reason we're doing it is because this would have blown a hole and killed the project. And we wanted to keep eco here.
So that leads me to another question about eco-plumbers. When we enter into something like this and do something like this, do we take a look at their financials and how they've been performing over a number of years as to...
Yeah, part of every evaluation, even on this development project itself, like we even got into the performance with the developer, because was there a possibility to say shrink the building, so maybe if there had to be a relocation, it wasn't as significant. So the answer is absolutely we do. To the extent of it, we can certainly share publicly that they've grown year over year over year in this community. So.
Well, my concern is that when you have a company that grows to that exponential growth, they run into cash flow problems, right? That's so typical of a company if they grow too fast. And that's what I'm worried that's what you're starting to see. So I'm just worried from the city's perspective. If we invest in this and we do this and something happens to them, how is the taxpayer protected?
So first, I mean, just even retaining the company, if you lose them, your loss from this company not being here is going to be close to $500,000 a year. So retaining them for under 2 years, you're pretty much backstopping even the investment that we made.
Okay.
But two, this project, you have another 100,000 square feet of speculative space that will be available for other users, like another eco-plumbers or another contractor's office. So you have the ability to have at least another job per 1,000 square feet. So even if you lost because eco had to break their lease for some reason,
right,
you're still backstopped with a significant amount of space that's going to have to be backfilled.
How much spec square space is in there?
This whole building is roughly 158,000 square feet. Eco is taking roughly a third.
And there's 2 other spec buildings over there too, right?
There's one on Edwards Farm,
right,
and there's one under construction on Reynolds, and there's one under construction on Weaver Quarter North.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you for your report. The second reading of 24-09 will be held on May 13th. And that is it for first readings. Now we move on to resolutions. Will the clerk please read 24-R-31 by title only?
To call for peace and an immediate, sustained, and mutual end to hostilities in Gaza, the release of hostages and detainees, and the urgent expansion of humanitarian assistance.
Would a council member like to sponsor and second?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Now we will hear from our public. So we will continue on with Noura Dabdoub.
Hello, thank you again. My name is Noura Dabdoub. I've spoken here before you a few times now. You previously heard a few minutes ago from Rania, who read the language of the ceasefire resolution that we had presented on March 11th to the council. We tried very hard to write a resolution that recognized the value of human lives and the ideals of equality, humanity, and international law. However, the language of the proposed resolution before the council tonight is entirely different from what we had drafted. We have spoken to council 4 times now and met with members individually numerous times. The only feedback we received from council members regarding our proposed language was that the word ceasefire was unacceptable. Even after all the meetings and discussions that we've had with City Council, not one council member could explain the logic behind the rejection of the word ceasefire. In fact, it seemed as if you agreed with us that criticism of this word defies logic. And when we asked for actual constructive criticism or edits to our draft resolution language, the response was that the language seemed acceptable. We did not receive even one suggested edit, only pushback against this word ceasefire. So why did you copy word for word the City of Columbus's resolution instead of using our straightforward and even-handed draft language? Why did you reject the word ceasefire when you're literally using the definition of the word ceasefire in your proposed resolution? Despite the fact that your proposed resolution does not reflect our drafted language, we do recognize this as a step forward. We recognize this as a ceasefire resolution, and we will take this as an indication that there is more work to be done. It's the responsibility of City Council to represent constituents and uphold ideals of equality and humanity for all. All members of Council have a duty to see us as fully equal, fully worthy human beings, a duty to respond to requests for recognition of our full humanity without first seeking the approval of other groups, a duty to respect our community without first condemnation or stipulation. I hope that the next time a community comes before this council in pain and needing acknowledgement of injustice, that the council responds with open hearts and brave leadership without qualification. Thank you.
Thank you. Katie Kinnison.
Hello, I'm Reverend Katie Kinnison. Do I push something? No. From Hilliard Presbyterian Church. I'm a member of the PCUSA Presbyterians in this country and part of the tent of Abraham, Sarah, and Hagar. If you were in an Arabic-speaking land, we would all call God Allah. It concerns me that fear confuses. So much so that calls for peace are being labeled hate speech. It is not anti-Semitic to critique the nation-state of Israel or to condemn genocide as passionately and clearly as we are able. Not all Christians understand modern Israel to be a continuation of the biblical people of Israel. And God demanded much of biblical Israel, still does. Their own prophets critiqued them when they trampled over the needs of the poor and afflicted, and when they failed to meet the standards of God's justice. By the same token, God protects these people and demands justice for them as well. People of faith today, Jews and Christians and Muslims, are all called to a standard of justice beyond that we see practiced by nations. We know it is wrong to bomb innocent people. It is wrong to starve other human beings. It is wrong to claim your own sovereignty and sense of security at the expense of the lives of others. And more than that, such an approach never works. In the faith that I am called to, We understand that we are to look to the margins and empower those who have been cast aside. The Palestinian people have been cast aside, and now they are being obliterated. A people, communities, a culture, families. Passover is about freedom from slavery. In Gaza, the Palestinian people have been living under a militarily enforced state of siege for more than 15 years. 2/3 of the population of Gaza are refugees from the 1948 Nakba. Refers to the mass displacement and dispossession of Palestinians. Now, 85% of the population of the territory of Gaza has been displaced, half of them children. Most of the infrastructure is damaged or gone. 33,970 people killed, 8,000 civilians missing, almost 77,000 wounded people. We cannot be silent.
Thank you. Nadia Razul.
Hi, good evening, Council. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak with you again. As a proud Ohio-born, raised, and educated citizen, I believe that our differences are what make our community thrive and grow. According to the April 15th Columbus Dispatch article, international immigrants accounted for more than half the population growth over the past 3 years. Population growth drives demand for businesses, and likewise, population growth increases the supply of workers that firms want to hire. In 2019 alone, immigrants in Columbus paid $712 million in state and local taxes. If it weren't for immigration in a state that struggles retaining population like Ohio, we would have much faster population loss. And like Youngstown, my hometown, we would have a vicious downward cycle. I personally am not an immigrant, but I just wanted to point out that yes, there are things that seem very different about all of us, and I believe these differences should be celebrated. But as we all know, there are more similarities than differences connecting all of us. For example, we have hopes, dreams, goals, and ambitions. We pray that our children are healthy and successful. We want them to make good decisions. And maybe like me, you want your children to be off your payroll. I'm sure there are endless examples that I could point out, but the one similarity that we hope to point out by coming here was the fact that we, as adults, as human beings, have the power and the obligation to stand up and say that we believe that every human has a right to live a life free of fear and the right to dream of a future with even the most basic needs. And as the president of this council, Cynthia Vermillion, so eloquently pointed out in the last meeting, we are all one humanity. And as Councilman Greg Betts said today in his invocation, we need to lead with empathy. This has been our message for the past 6 weeks. We tried sharing personal stories, hoping you would understand that we are hurting. My heart is aching that my tax dollars, our collective tax dollars, are not spent on much needed health care. Our taxes are being used not for higher education, not for child care, not for infrastructure, and no money for economic assistance. And like the lovely lady from CODA said, families are feeling the squeeze. But just a few days ago, $26.4 billion of our taxes was approved to continue a genocide. In conclusion, as we are progressing as a human race into the future, the true essence of humanity is being corrupted slowly. Over the past 42 days, our message has been simply to ask you to pass a resolution to show that we can come together to show true humanity.
Thank you. Mary Yoder.
Good evening. My name's Mary Yoder, and I attended Jonathan Alder High School just down the road. I'm part of Mennonite Church USA. From '02 to '07, I worked for Christian human rights organizations in the West Bank. I witnessed many atrocities committed by Israeli soldiers against Palestinians. Today, the same brutality is used, but on a much larger scale, killing innocent civilians, medical personnel, journalists, their families, blocking of medical supplies, food, water, and electricity. We escorted Palestinian children, kindergarten through grade 6, to safety past Israeli soldiers and checkpoints. Curfew was often enforced, not allowing the children to go to school. So loudspeakers from the military jeeps blasted, "Do not move, do not move, you are under curfew." One morning, the military made no such announcement, so several thousand children began walking to school. The 2 Army jeeps arrived and told the children they had to go home. The children were confused because there was no announcement and kept walking. And these were 5-year-olds to 11. The soldiers called for enforcement and then fired round after round of tear gas into the crowds of these young children, followed by sound grenades of 175 decibels, which will lead to permanent hearing loss because exposure of just 85 decibels is what is the maximum. One jeep advanced towards the children. I ran and flung myself in front of the jeep. It halted. We witnessed many Israeli soldiers ransacking Palestinian homes and taking children, usually at night. Today, there's mass incarceration of children, over 700 in the West Bank. As the woman said, more than 34,000 Palestinians killed, 70,000 injured, around 7,000 still under the rubble. Killing children is not self-defense. Killing doctors, nurses, ambulance drivers, and maiming at least 1,000 children is not self-defense. Killing journalists and bombing hospitals is not self-defense. Bombing schools and 12 universities, killing 95 deans and professors is not self-defense. Bombing food delivery trucks and those waiting for food is not self-defense. And denying medical aid to thousands of injured and thousands of people with chronic illnesses is not self-defense. These actions go unchallenged as US dollars flow into the Israeli military. As human beings, we demand a ceasefire to end the slaughter of fellow humans. We demand a ceasefire to help Israelis whose kidnapped loved ones are still missing. And I'm here to say that caring about the population within this city should be a priority. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm Masood. Good evening. I'm going to start with a little story. So last year I hiked Angel's Landing in Utah, a trail that some list as one of the most dangerous in the country. The top has chains you have to use to climb up so you don't fall off the edge of the cliff. It seemed scary in the weeks leading up to the hike, but once I started, it actually wasn't that scary at all. It was hard, but it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be, and I did make it to the top, and the view was incredible. On the way back down, we started talking about Palestine, about the historical context from well before October 7th, except whenever I said the word Palestine, my voice dropped to almost a whisper, so no one around would hear me. You see, I was in college when the September 11th attacks happened. Like everyone, I was horrified and shocked. But on top of that, like many Muslims in America, I felt targeted. Actually, I was targeted. I had a close friend who stand just inches from my face and tell me that my family overseas deserved to die because they're Muslim. Another guy cornered me in the campus hallway, pushed me up against a wall, put his hands on me and asked me how it feels to be a terrorist lover. So I started to tread carefully then. When I've marched for Palestine over the past decade, I stay close to the edge of the crowd so I can get away quickly if I need to. When I've attended Palestinian events across the years, I always take a friend so that I have help if another person shoves me up against the wall. But today, who you have before you is someone willing to get shoved if I have to. Now I attend protests, lectures, sometimes alone. I used to be afraid that someone would confront me and I wouldn't know what to say. I wouldn't have the right information. But watching the intensity over these past months and tragedy that has been going on for decades,
My own weakness is dissolving to make space for resilience, and there are countless like me, and we are not going away. To the Palestinians in this room, I'm sorry that it took me this long. And to the council members, while this resolution avoids the important terminology and recognition that we need, I hope that you, like me, have learned over these weeks and continue to learn in coming weeks that your resilience has grown, that you will not consider today as an end, but as a first step towards recognizing the humanity of the Palestinian people. I'm here to tell you that it seems scary, but once you start demanding an end to the massacre of children, it's not really that scary at all. And at times it is hard, but it isn't as hard as what I thought it would be. And once we get there to that place of peace and humanity, the view will be incredible.
Thank you. Rima Dabdoo.
City Council members, thank you for hearing us today. My name is Rima Dabdoob. I've been coming here week after week speaking to you as a Muslim and as a Palestinian American. I hope that by now, members of council have an understanding of how different identities can overlap. Muslims are followers of the religion of Islam. There are Muslims in Hilliard from all over the US and the world. Not all Muslims are Arab. Not all Arabs are Muslim. Arabs are a racial identity brought together by common shared history, heritage, and language. There are Arabs of all religions or no religion, and Arabs are a large, diverse identity group originating from countries spanning over 2 continents. Palestinian Arabs are an indigenous people who are diverse in their religious beliefs, including Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Baha'i, Druze, among others, and are brought together by a shared history and culture tied to the historic land of Palestine. We know that you see our various communities when you drive around Hilliard and see our businesses or the mosque, when you visit Hilliard schools, or when you walk in our neighborhoods and see our families. I know that the city of Hilliard recognizes the value of having a community that is diverse. I know that Hilliard is genuinely interested in embracing the diversity of our community and is working to address the needs of our diverse community. Some of these efforts are easy, like sending holiday greetings or social media posts celebrating diversity and inclusion. But as a city council, you should recognize that those easy efforts do not actually fully address the needs of the members of our diverse, marginalized communities. We approached the City Council 6 weeks ago with a draft resolution that addressed the needs of Hilliard's Palestinians whose families and communities in Palestine are currently enduring a genocide that has been supported and funded almost unconditionally by the US government. We came to you saying, this is how you address our needs right now, and provided you with the actual language of a basic human rights-based resolution. We hoped and expected that your response would be an easy yes, because we knew that you recognize the humanity of Ukrainians who are suffering from an unjust war without even a resolution or community effort. We hope that you do pass a resolution that recognizes our humanity, our pain, our community, but we also hope that you realize there is much more work that needs to be done to fully actually address the needs of my community in Hilliard, to fully embrace inclusion and equality. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ghulam Rahman. Rahman? Not here? I think it's Ghulam, G-O-L-A-M, or maybe it's G-I-O-L-A-M. Okay, we'll move on. He left, okay. All right, Wayne Genter.
My name is Wayne Genter, and I'm a resident of Hilliard. It is my strong opinion that the Hilliard City Council should not present or pass a resolution on any issue that is outside the governing authority and responsibility of this council. If you do pass this resolution, be advised that you will most likely see more demands in the future for such resolutions. Why? I present brief snapshots of Israel and Hamas. The state of Israel has a diverse population of Christians, Muslims, and Jews. The Israeli people have created a strong and prosperous democratic state of Israel in the midst of neighboring Arab Muslim countries and the more distant Persian country of Iran that refuse to recognize Israel's right to exist and work actively for its destruction. Israel has fought numerous wars for its survival, endured countless attacks of terrorism, and has defended from almost daily missile attacks. On October 7th, a barbarous assault on Israel citizens by Hamas triggered the current catastrophe in Gaza. The express goals of the IDF in Gaza are limited. That is to secure the hostages and eliminate the terrorist group Hamas. Is it not the responsibility of governments to secure peace for its people? Would any other country be complacent in response to such atrocities? War is sometimes necessary to secure peace. Israel must complete its elimination of Hamas operations, which are largely now confined to southern Gaza. As for Gaza, its people have largely been indoctrinated for decades with a hatred of the Jews and a religious zeal to eliminate the state of Israel. Gazan people have allowed the terrorist organization of Hamas to govern. History predicts that any ceasefire would be honored by Hamas only while it provides some short-term military advantage. Do not be surprised when the resolution before Council proves to be meaningless as conditions rapidly change. Then expect partisan groups to demand another resolution and another and another. There are also other tragedies in this world. Are you prepared to pass resolutions for these also? For example, there is what has been called a silent genocide in Africa. Since the turn of the century, 62,000 Nigerian Christians have been killed by Boko Haram, an Islamic terrorist group. The situation isn't getting better, it's getting worse. So my recommendation is to stop passing these types of resolutions unless you expect many more.
Thank you. Mazen Razul.
Thank you. I hope everyone was respectful today, since we're seen as non-respectful. So for the past 5 months, 6 months, genocide in Gaza has kept on getting worse and worse. Over 250 Palestinians on average have been killed every single day, with a total of over 40,000 Palestinians. We have come again and again to this council to ask for them to recognize this genocide and pass a ceasefire resolution. You see, the term ceasefire is a term that's universally defined as suspension of fighting, one that typically occurs during armed conflicts. Only in the case of Palestine will you find so much hesitation to not use this term. As city council members, as elected officials, it is a true disappointment, to say the least, that you do not have the courage or bravery to use this specific term. A genocide found as a plausible case by the ICJ and the US District Court with over 40,000 Palestinians killed is much more than just hostilities. Reducing the genocide to the term of hostilities is truly dehumanizing and undermining our pain and our suffering. Your resolution, although it includes many terms that are welcomed, since I insisted on drafting them, including them in the Columbus City Council resolution, it still fails to meet what this community has asked you for from before. Palestinians have a right to freedom, they have a right to self-determination, they have a right to dignity. As your resolution is titled, Resolution for Peace, you must acknowledge that justice is a prerequisite for peace. Without justice, the term peace means only to surrender to the status quo and allow the oppression to continue and go on. Finally, Palestinians will survive this genocide. We will rise again together in Gaza and all over the world. We will become stronger, rebuild Gaza, heal together, and stand up again to continue our fight for justice and freedom. We will never forget and we will never forgive those who committed this genocide or those who were complicit in supporting them and arming them and justifying it. As a Palestinian ambassador said, Palestinians may not be the greatest nation on earth, but no other nation is better or greater than Palestinians. I informed you before in one of the city council meetings about the mayor of our city, of my city in Palestine, who was taken hostage in October. And up to today, he is still taken hostage. Today, just before I came here, I saw my Arabic teacher from high school was released after 6 months, and he lost 2/3 of his weight while he was held hostage by Israel. Thank you for this resolution, I guess, but we hope that the City Council has more courage in the future to actually say what it needs to be said.
Thank you. We appreciate all of you coming out to speak on this important topic. I'm going to open it up to discussion amongst council members. Would anybody like to say anything? Greg Betts.
So a little over 3 years ago, after 30 years of military service and multiple tours to the Middle East, I retired as a colonel in the United States Army. I tell you this for context. Although I'm new to municipal government, I have 3 decades of experience in federal and state government. Those 3 decades of service have led me to the conclusion that government at all levels, from federal down to municipal, has 2 very basic functions. That's to protect its citizens from all forms of harm and to empower those citizens, both individually and collectively as a community, to reach their full potential. And I firmly believe that for government service to be done right, it starts with empathy. Simply having empathy for your fellow citizens and taking responsibility to act on that empathy in the form of service to others and to the common good. How does government protect its citizens? Well, a myriad of ways, of course. The obvious ways are through the military, protecting the nation from attack and invasion and protecting our national interests around the world. Through our great police and fire departments, protecting us in all the ways we know they protect us every single day. But government also protects us from disease, poverty, hunger, homelessness, discrimination, etc. The list goes on. How does government empower its citizens? Also in a myriad of ways. Public education, access to health care. We just received a great presentation from CODA on the myriad ways that infrastructure empowers us to live healthy, productive lives, to be able to go wherever we want in this nation. But the way the government empowers us, the thing I want to focus on this evening is that, a basic human desire is to be a part of a community where we live. We want to feel like we are contributing members of that community. But in order to feel like we are truly a part of the community, we must first satisfy the other basic human desire, and that is to be heard, to be listened to by our communities. The way I see this resolution, we as a council have been asked by a segment of our community to help them be heard, to amplify their voice, because they feel like they are not being listened to, like their pleas have fallen on deaf ears. Now, I'm a pragmatist. I understand that this resolution will likely have no material impact on the horrific conditions in Gaza. However, as an elected official of this community, I firmly believe that I have a responsibility to answer the call of the citizens of this great city and to empower them. They are asking this council to simply amplify their voices. Whether that amplification falls on deaf ears or whether it produces any material results, I see as irrelevant. The way I see it, we as a city council have a responsibility to make every effort possible to empower our citizens. It's one of only two basic functions to this council: protection and empowerment. Therefore, I believe that the very least we can do is answer the calls of our fellow citizens and to empower them by amplifying their collective voice. And while I am personally disappointed that this proposed resolution does not include the word ceasefire, because as a retired senior military leader, I can tell you that ceasefire is a good thing from a strategic perspective. Despite my disappointment, though, I am happy that at least this resolution is being considered, and I implore each of you to join me in voting to enact this resolution. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? All right, I'd like to say a few words. This isn't the language that I would have landed on. Personally, I have no problem using the word ceasefire. I also agree that that is exactly what needs to take place in this horrific circumstance. I'm only one of 7, however, and so this was the language that we landed on. I agree with you, Nadia. We are all more similar than we are different. We are, as I said, we are all one humanity, and I firmly believe that. And I firmly believe that as local government, one of our duties is to listen to our constituents and to show that we care and that we do have empathy and compassion. I'm so sorry. It's been hard these last 6 weeks listening to your stories. You truly have been through a lot, and your families and your friends. And I'm sorry it's taken us 6 weeks to do something, but we're here trying to do a little bit for you, for all of us. Again, we're all one human family. So I don't think that what we do tonight is meaningless. I know we're not going to affect Washington, D.C. policy, but at least they can take note that many communities throughout the country are calling for an end to these hostilities, to these horrific hostilities. So with that, we will put the resolution to a vote. Oh, Peggy, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Is this where we can motion to make an amendment?
If you'd like to.
I would. Under section 2, I would like to, right after the word Gaza, I would like to add Gaza, comma, Israel, comma, in the Middle East. And then section 3, after the second Gaza, I would like to add the same words, Gaza, comma, Israel, comma, in the Middle East.
Hold on, Dee, let me get my green light on. I second that.
Okay, I guess we'll take a vote on the motion to amend. Will the clerk please call the roll?
For clarification, that is in section 2.
Yes, ma'am. And then section 3, after the second word Gaza.
So towards the end of the paragraph,
Yes, ma'am.
to add Israel
And the Middle East.
and the Middle East.
So how would, I don't have it in front of me, I'm sorry. How would that whole thing read?
Just ask the clerk to read it.
I can read it. And Peggy can make sure I'm following correctly.
Yep.
Council calls for an immediate, sustained, and mutual end to hostilities in Gaza, Israel, and the Middle East, the release of hostages and detainees, and the urgent expansion of humanitarian assistance. That's section 2. Section 3, do you want me to read the whole paragraph? It's the last second line to the end. Reconstruction of Gaza, Israel, and the Middle East. Is that correct, Ms. Hale?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Hale,
Yes.
Mr. Carrier,
Yes.
Mr. Betts,
No.
Vice President Cantone,
I abstain.
Ms. Cole,
No.
Mr. Teeter,
Yes.
President Vermillion.
No.
So we have a 3-3, correct? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, motion fails.
So now we will vote on the,
Is that correct then? 3-3 on the,
That is correct. The motion
Amendment.
fails for lack of a majority.
right.
now we will vote on the resolution as is in the agenda.
Mr. Betts,
Yes.
Ms. Cole,
Yes.
Vice President Cantone,
I abstain.
Mr. Carrier,
No.
Mr. Teeter,
Yes.
Ms. Hale,
No.
Vice President Vermillion.
Yes.
Motion carried. 4-2.
Okay. 24-R-31 has passed and is in effect at the earliest date allowable by law. So this concludes the legislative portion of the agenda. All right, under President's Communication, it is Administrative Professionals Day on Wednesday, the 24th. So on behalf of my City Council colleagues, I'd like to express our deepest gratitude to our City Council Clerk, Dee Warbrick, for all she does to keep us organized and informed. We could not do the business of council we couldn't do it without her amazing work. She does keep us in line, so thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
City manager updates?
No updates this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Any other items up for council discussion? All right, seeing none, I would entertain a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.